Hi, welcome to the second episode of Take Two. I'm Brennan Klein, and I realized last time I didn't fully introduce myself because I was very excited to explain gay sex to Carrie. But yes, I am a contributor at Alternate Ending. I basically pick up the movies that Tim does not want to watch and review, which is why it works so well that our tastes are an exact opposite Venn diagram most of the time. But yes, and Tim and I also work together on a podcast called Bride of Alternate Ending that's available exclusively on the Patreon, where every month we talk about a horror movie. Last month we talked about something. Wow. We talked about...
It was a slasher film last time, right?
Yes, Slumber Party Massacre 2. That's what it was.
Slumber Party Massacre 2. Yes.
And this month, as voted by the Patreons, we will be talking about Dario Argento's Deep Red, which I'm very excited about.
It's a film I've seen once or twice. I have some thoughts about.
Yeah, I think so. But it had been like a good 10 years or so since you'd reviewed it. And I'm like, maybe we'll have something new to bring to your review of it. In case you hadn't noticed, I am here talking with Tim today. This podcast, we kind of look at the previous week's episode of Alternate Ending, kick the tires on normally it's a top 5 list. We pick a movie out of that. But this time, Tim, you and Carrie and Rob talked about a double feature of Kagemusha and Ron. And
yes,
I did not think it was a valuable discussion for us to just talk about one of those movies again.
I mean, I feel like we certainly did not exhaust Kagemusha and Ron, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's...
I take your point.
Your podcast was at least, a sixth of the length of the two of those put together.
Exactly.
But regardless, I decided to zero in on a topic that came up a couple times when you were talking about both those films in the form of Kurosawa Akira's, kind of eyes and... Would you say co-director or just like assistant?
I mean, assistant. Like Kurosawa definitely knew what he wanted those films to be. They were his vision, but in as much as he was blind, he had a bit of a difficulty executing that vision. So, I think the formal credit was directing coordinator or something like that. I forget exactly what the formal credit was.
Well, that's what he is. His name is Honda Ishiro, and he also directed Godzilla, along with a great many of the sequels to Godzilla. So, considering that the new Godzilla vs. Kong movie is coming out, and I have been plowing my way through the entire Godzilla canon, I figured it would be a good idea to just sit and chat with you, Tim, about the kind of Godzilla franchise as a whole. What do you think about that? What do you say?
I think that we can knock through all 35 Godzilla films in about 25 minutes. I think that's doable.
I think we can. Well, look, I've got a general attack plan, I think. Well, it does help. Well, it either helps or hurts the conversation that I've seen up to Godzilla 2000 Millennium, which is the 24th Godzilla picture. Of course, I've also seen the 2014 American Godzilla and its sequel. Those were never mind. I did unfortunately see the 2014 Godzilla before the original Godzilla, but it didn't ruin my watch of it because how could it?
In the 1954 film, then you were not surprised when Godzilla turned out to be a giant radioactive lizard.
Not so much.
That's disappointing.
Well, that's okay because they do kind of... Like most franchises, every now and again, they have the characters discover once more what the nature of the villain is. And we really didn't need to bother. It's Godzilla.
I mean, it's a fairly self-explanatory concept, and they do sometimes, especially in the last big run of movies, the one that you're about to start, they do sometimes spend too much time explaining the concept when it's like, we get it. He's a big lizard who stomps over Japan.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that complicated. And yet... Anyway, so I think the best place to start is with Honda Ishiro and with the first Godzilla. When's the first time you saw that movie? And was it your first Godzilla movie?
So was it my first Godzilla movie? That would be difficult for me to say because I saw it at a very young age, but I think the answer to that question is no. I suspect I saw one of the '70s Godzilla's films first, but this is going back. This is going back many, many years. I don't want to try and pin that down. Um, I can tell you that I first saw the original Godzilla when it was still more or less impossible to see its original cut in the original Japanese audio track. I would have seen the version called Godzilla King of the Monsters that was released in the United States in '56 with the addition not just of an English dub, but of several scenes sort of inserting Raymond Burr into the action, which basically consisted of him like staring in shock off camera and then cutting to the visual effects footage of Godzilla.
To be fair,
And
that's what most of the Japanese actors are doing too.
well, that's why it works. And I think that the American version, and I can't just say Godzilla King of the Monsters because now in 2019 we had another film called Godzilla King of the Monsters, but it is actually a very thoughtfully assembled localization, I would say, of Godzilla. So it's certainly not a crap movie, although the original Japanese cut, much more sophisticated, much darker film, much more serious in its themes. And I would have seen that version for the first time. It was given a fairly high-profile release in the United States, I think for its 50th anniversary. So I think that would have been 2004.
Wow. I gotta say, like, I am lucky enough to have been in the current timeline where I didn't watch any Godzilla films before that time period, so I got to see the original Godzilla as it was, which I do think is a great treat. I've not seen Godzilla King of the Monsters. I'm not entirely sure how to do that at this point. I'm sure it's somewhere.
I mean, depending on how you watch Godzilla, the Criterion Channel and the Criterion Collection's big fancy 15-film Godzilla box set both have the American cut.
Do they?
They do.
I was looking on my Criterion box set because that is how I watched the first 15 films, but I wasn't looking that hard because I was like, I don't really want to watch Godzilla again right away. I need to give it some space.
Yeah, as a PSA to any of our listeners who do have that box set or have access to it and are curious, the American cut of Godzilla is a special feature on the Godzilla disc, the first disc. The American cut of Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla, rather, is the version that's on the main disc, and then the Japanese cut of King Kong versus Godzilla is a special feature on the last disc of that box set.
Which was a mystery to me, which is why I watched the American cut in my run through.
Okay, and we can talk about the differences there. Most of the films where there is a salient difference between the American and Japanese cuts, I have seen both.
I mean other than Godzilla King of the Monsters, where you just said there's kind of a, it's not the worst, it's like pretty evenly done. Would you say that there is anything that any of the other American cuts have to offer?
The ones that have really substantially different cuts are the first Godzilla, the sequel, Godzilla Raids Again, which was initially released as something that he's not even called Godzilla. I forget the name of it. King Kong versus Godzilla, the 1985 Godzilla, which has different names in different countries and based on what cut you're looking at, but basically Return of Godzilla or Godzilla 1985 would be the two main titles there. And then Godzilla 2000 Millennium was actually released in a very different version. And there were tiny tweaks to several of them, but those are the ones where there's like substantial differences. Like you're actually sort of watching a different movie.
Yeah. Sorry, what?
Oh, because you asked if I thought any of them were actually worth watching, and I was going to answer that, but go ahead.
Oh, no, you answer. I totally failed as an interviewer.
No, that's okay. So, Godzilla 2000, the American cut, is shorter and funnier. The people at Toho sort of knew that Godzilla had a camp reputation in the United States. So they decided, hey, let's lean into that. Let's deliberately make what in Japan is a fairly serious movie. Let's make sure the dub is sort of full of goofy, jokey asides. and it's not bad actually. It's different. It's a very different experience, but it sort of works on its own merits. And I will say that was actually the first Godzilla movie I ever saw in a theater, because they did give that one a fairly big American theatrical release in '99 or 2000, whatever year it came out. So that was a very cool thing. The other one that I'd say is not worth discarding entirely. Well, Godzilla 1985 brings back Raymond Burr, so that's kind of a fun like nod to history. But King Kong versus Godzilla, I don't think is a terribly good film in either cut, but the American cut gets rid of a lot of very extraneous material. The original King Kong versus Godzilla is part of a very specifically Japanese genre of comedy called the Salaryman movie, which is so culturally contingent, and it's so mired in like, here's what Japan is going through economically in the 1950s. It's very difficult for Americans to even know what the hell we're looking at. And I do think that the American cut of King Kong versus Godzilla helps take out some of that material and make it a more like parsable cinematic object.
And it does preserve the scene where the salaryman gives cigarettes to a child in blackface. So thank God.
Absolutely, we would not want to give up the good stuff.
Exactly.
The tedious stuff.
But yeah, unfortunately, Godzilla 2000, I had no recourse but to watch the American cut in the way that I have access to it currently. Does the Japanese cut still have the line about how we all have a little bit of Godzilla in us?
I believe that it does not. It's been a while since I've watched either version.
That would make a lot of sense, I dare say. Okay, good. I was a little worried.
Yep.
But anyway, okay. So there's 35, soon to be 36 of these films.
Yep.
I want to know, what are your top 3 and your bottom 3 Godzilla movies?
All right. Well, you told me to prepare for this, so I was prepared. Top 3 is a lot easier for me, actually.
I'm wondering if we'll line up, because I have one too.
In part because my top 2 is like not even a question in my mind. The best one is the 1954 Godzilla.
Of course.
The one that started everything. That's a gimme. That's free. No one is going to say it's not the first Godzilla.
We can drop down to include like top 4 if you want to expand a little bit, because it's like that's kind of obvious.
Well, we could do that, because I think we will have some disagreements if we do that, actually.
Sure.
But for me, my number 2 then is the 1964 Mothra versus Godzilla.
And that is a pretty widely accepted as like one of the best of the sequels, if I recall.
If there's a consensus for number 2, that's what it is, I would say. My number 3 is 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla.
The final Honda film.
The final Honda. Actually, all 3 of the ones I've named so far were directed by Honda. So, and then if we're going to top 4s, my number 4 would be 1995's Godzilla versus Destroya, which is the end of the second phase of Godzilla films, and a film where like Godzilla was marketed basically as watch Godzilla die, and you do.
Yeah, just like Paris Hilton in the film House of Wax. That's how they advertise
exactly
that
like that. Exactly, only tragic instead of funny.
Yes, exactly. He doesn't get a giant pole shoved through him. But yeah, no, I recently watched Godzilla vs. Destroyer, and I think that movie, I mean, it very much intends to engage with the material of the original Godzilla, including bringing back the lead actress in a cameo role. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really, really interesting, because the villain that Godzilla faces off against is the result of the oxygen destroyer, which Dr. Serizawa invented and wanted to be kept from the world, and like the idea of the ramifications of even literally the most well-intentioned, like saintly scientist in the world who wanted to prevent this from doing terrible things, like it couldn't be prevented.
Exactly.
And I think that fits with the kind of tone that Godzilla has been working with from the beginning, on and off in the interim.
I mean, every tone that you can make a movie in, one of the Godzillas has operated in that tone.
Yes.
Like, there's so much variety in this series.
I think for me, I'm an even, like, of the tone that I prefer, I'm an even split between the like more sober, horrifying atomic atrocities versus the like extremely camp silly ones.
Hmm.
I kind of appreciate the extreme ends of the spectrum, I suppose. Like my number one, obviously Godzilla. My number two, I think this is less of a popular choice, is the immediate sequel that came out 5 months later, Godzilla Raids Again.
Mm.
Um, obviously it's not as good as Godzilla. But I find that there's these really quiet, again, like sober moments of beautiful horror. Like I'm specifically thinking of a scene where I believe they're trying to capture Godzilla in the bay, and all the lights in the town or in the city start to wink out, and it just very much is reminiscent of like London during the Blitzkrieg, or like it's a very wartime movie. Still, it's really really kind of chilling in that way, and I really appreciated that.
Yes, no, I think it's an underappreciated film. I don't have it anywhere near my top three, but I think it deserves more than it gets. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and just because it was such a quick turnaround and it was so immediately reviled that it sank the franchise for what, 8 years after that. 6 years.
That sounds right.
Yeah, yeah,
6, 7, something like that.
yeah, 7 years. But I'm glad we've had a half a century to reevaluate it at least.
Exactly.
Speaking of a movie that maybe needs more reevaluation, 1991's Godzilla versus King Ghidorah is my number three. This is where we get into the really goofy side of things. It's about time traveling people from the future. There is a Terminator that comes with them.
There is a Terminator, indeed.
But it just this is a movie that like we're at the point where the scripts have really stopped bothering making any sense, but we do go back in time to World War II and we fight a dinosaur, and we get basically the entire Pokemon evolution chain of King Ghidorah.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 little baby
including
Ghidorahs.
including starting out as like unreasonably adorable and then getting darker and uglier as he evolves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we get baby Ghidorah. It's 3 little things called Dorats, which are disgusting, and my boyfriend loved them. I will. I'll put a pin in something I want to say about that. And then we get Ghidorah, then we get Mecha Ghidorah, and it's all great. And my number 4 is actually the original Ghidorah, the 3-headed monster, his first appearance. Just because he's such this lightning, inescapable force of destruction, and I love the wild, like, disarray that his heads are flapping around. It's really alarming to look at.
Yeah, that would actually be my next. If I had done a top 5, that would have been my number 5. So it sounds like we're actually very close on that one.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I believe you've said that Ghidorah is the best character
he
to
is
ever
my
be on
favorite.
screen.
He is my favorite kaiju. I love the design. I love the puppetry, and I mean, you don't get the sort of richness of personality that you get with Godzilla in the better Godzilla films, but he's a 3-headed dragon, like
Yeah.
with 2 tails even.
You gotta stay balanced.
And I will say the 91 Godzilla versus King Ghidorah it benefits immensely from being followed by the rest of the 90s films, I think.
Oh, dear Lord.
So it is fun in a way that a lot of the films in that era of Godzilla, I think, are not.
I totally am happy to hear you say that, because I do think that the script is messy in a very similar way to the follow-up, which is, well, it has a lot of titles, but like Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. And I think that movie is just an absolute shambles, whereas Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, which has a lot of the same flaws, at least held itself together more.
I agree with that. And I think neither one of us is just plain unwatchable in the way that Godzilla versus Space Godzilla is to me.
Oh my god. I hate as a reviewer to admit this, but I did fall asleep during that movie for about 5 minutes.
That's the correct response, except that you woke up after 5 minutes instead of like 80.
Yeah, no, that I regret not having leaned in more. No, but I was propped up on my elbow, and I've only ever been conscious in that position. But somehow I slipped away from Space Godzilla. Anyway,
Alas.
I will say before we get into our bottom 3 or 4 or whatever, um, my boyfriend, who I have been watching all these movies with, his name is Ben. Hi, Ben. He has a taste for the cutesy ones that ranges on the absurd.
Mm.
He loves him some Manila. He loves him the weird raptor one that they have in oh god, is it? It's not Biolante, is it? It's one of the '90s ones. Before
Yeah.
before little Godzilla gets bigger, like he at first comes out of an egg and looks like a Jurassic Park raptor with a weird
Right.
face.
Yeah, Baby Godzilla's evolution in the 90s films is strange because he gets more cute as he gets older, which is not how most animals develop.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then he gets fucking obliterated in Destoroyah. That movie is not pulling any punches.
That is possibly one of the reasons I like Godzilla vs. Destroyer better than the other films in that phase.
That's probably fair. I mean, and it's a solid movie too. It's the one that has the most horror movie inflections to it.
Which is the actual reason that it makes my top 4 is because it is very dark. I think it's fatalistic in ways that it earns, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And then there, there's a lot of alien and aliens in that movie, but
Oh yeah.
you could have worse movie DNA in your movie.
Oh yeah. And also from where you are, you're about to start the bulk of the Millennium films. You have more alien knockoffs in front of you and aliens knockoffs. Just FYI.
Okay. Well, great. I mean, I do feel like most of these later Godzilla films are tinged by whatever they have decided to rip off this one, whether it's Jurassic Park or Terminator, or they're spreading their influences wide, and it's at least fun to be like, all right, which one did they pick this time?
Yeah. Which I feel like at some point we need to segue into our bottoms, and you've given me a couple different hook points that I can segue into. So should I just go ahead and start with that?
Yeah, segue into that bottom, Tim.
Hey. Well, no, because you said your boyfriend likes the cute ones, which means your boyfriend's probably a lot bigger than I am on my least favorite Godzilla film of all time, which is even named for Baby Godzilla. It is 1967's Son of Godzilla.
Wow, I don't think that movie's particularly good, but it's in the low middle for me, I would say.
It is a film that I find very hard to watch. It's short, which is I think the best thing about it. It's a sort of weird like bullied child's fantasy about being like helped by Godzilla and baby Godzilla, who is like human sized. So it's actually the size of the suit.
Wait, no, aren't you talking about All Monsters Attack?
Am I talking about All Monsters Attack?
Yeah.
Whichever one has that plot is the one I'm talking about. Is that All Monsters Attack?
Yeah, because he's having these fantasies, and there's the kind of bank heist criminals hiding out.
Oh, okay. It's I get them confused because they both hinge on Baby Godzilla a lot, and they're actually my bottom 2. So
Oh, okay, great.
yes, so I'm talking about the one that has the fantasy, but then we can skip right ahead to then. So All Monsters Attack 1969 is my bottom. Son of Godzilla 1967 is my second from the bottom. I don't like Baby Godzilla. I think is a big part of what's going on. And these are also both 2 movies that use a shitload of stock footage, which is never exciting.
Yeah, the stock footage is a real mess. Manila, the design is unpalatable.
It is an insipid creature.
It looks like a Teletubby fell asleep in a frying pan. It's a real
like the worst eyes.
Yeah, these giant goo goo eyes, and just these kind of waxy candy lips that peel back really unappealingly.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, but still, that didn't make my bottom. Well, my bottom 2 are actually, it's a pair of the American films. My absolute least favorite is the most recent one, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Which I think is just an enormous, elaborate, expensive waste of potential. Because it does assemble, all the monsters that you know and love. There's, it's been a minute since I've seen it, but like Mothra, believe Ghidorah's in it.
Yep, he's the main villain.
Yes,
and we also get to see our good friend Rodan.
Yes, who, deserves a beautiful CGI treatment, and not to be like a paper airplane on a string, but look, I
like paper airplane on a string.
No, yeah, I do too, but the flying monsters I have a little bit of a harder time like really embracing.
I feel like in general, Rodan looks better as a flying paper airplane on a string than Mothra tends to.
Yes, and there's a kind of like jet plane-esque approach to the way that he flies through the sky that I feel like it works a little better. For him to be as stiff as he is.
I think that's exactly what it is, yeah.
But yeah, so we get all these creatures and it's like, wow, yes, we get to have this lush, beautiful CGI. But what if they were all indistinguishable blobs that were the color of oatmeal?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just kind of monster mashing in this teal and orange hellscape. Look, I love a bold color scheme for a movie, but if you're gonna do that, first of all, teal and orange is the most grotesquely overused color combination.
It's anti-bold, exactly.
And yeah, it's just I found that movie really, really disappointing. And then obviously Roland Emmerich's Godzilla '98 is my next up, which is just a collapsed souffle of a movie.
Oh yeah, that's my third up from the bottom. Actually.
Oh, okay.
So that's it's dreadful. It's so long. It's so boring. The Godzilla is just a disaster of conception. I actually like the design. I like that it looks like a giant fucked up iguana, but like literally from shot to shot, it grows or shrinks by like 900%. And you have to deal with just this insanely awful screenplay that's all jokey and quippy and stupid, while also shamelessly ripping off Jurassic Park. More shamelessly, I think, than any Godzilla film rips off any movie. Like there's an entire like act that's basically just escaping the raptors, but they're baby Godzillas.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess all three of your least favorite are baby Godzilla related.
Oh yes. No, it's not incidental. Although the baby Godzillas are not the problem with Godzilla '98. It's nothing but problems from the ground up.
Oh yeah, including how everyone in New Jersey is still just completely operating as if things are normal and just working at drugstores and things and not evacuating.
Right?
It is a mystifying movie, to say the least.
It is dismal. And while I take all of your points on the recent Godzilla King of the Monsters, I cannot fathom thinking that it is a worse film than the Emmerich film. The Emmerich film is just dire. It's just so unwatchably bad.
Yes. And it's important to remember that any list like this is subjective. I
get that.
I hated watching the new movie a lot more than I hated watching Godzilla '98 because that movie is bad in a way that was fun to engage with and be like, the fuck?
That's fair. I appreciate that distinction. Weirdly, although I have seen it 4 times and will possibly be making it a 5th time, I don't even get fun bad pleasure out of Godzilla '98. I find it tragic. It's very hard to watch.
Well, I hear you, and because if it was like a genuinely fun bad movie, it would be a lot higher. Like,
right, exactly.
One of my top, in my top 10 is Abira Horror of the Deep, which is not a great movie, but a movie that I find unfathomably bubbly and delightful to watch.
Sure.
But yeah, just
see that's.
Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say it's probably about where I am with Godzilla versus Megalon from '73, which I think is probably the worst made of the Godzilla films, but it's so silly that I couldn't possibly put it in my bottom.
That's the one with the theme park that has a giant Godzilla-shaped building, right?
I don't remember if it's that one. It's the one that has Jet Jaguar in it.
Oh, it is. Okay, those late '70s ones I get a little mixed up.
They blur together. I think the theme park might be Godzilla versus.
I think that must be Gigan.
I think it might be versus Gigan. Yeah.
Who, first of all, the design of Gigan is one of my favorites because it's so zestily ridiculous. He's got a big buzzsaw for a tummy.
Gigan feels more like a Gamera monster, and I mean that in a good way.
I have not seen any of the Gamera movies yet, but after a break, once I'm done with Godzilla, I think we're gonna have to do that.
The Gameras offer their own pleasures. They're cheaper, they're stupider, they're more explicitly for children, and all of the monsters look like mashups of like a kitchen supply and a toy.
Oh, I love that. But wait, okay, so you enjoy the kind of good bad-ness of the Jet Jaguar one, which I totally get. And the Jet Jaguar one is the one where the two lead characters are super duper definitely in a gay relationship.
I mean, I guess it's a question of who you think the main characters are, because I would say that the child is the main character, so one hopes that it's not clearly a gay relationship, but I know exactly what you're referring to.
Okay, well,
there is
the child's older brother and his older brother's live-in best friend, basically.
Yes. Oh, exactly. No, that is clearly going on. I don't even know that it's subtext. I mean, it's clearly subtext, but it's barely.
Well,
subtext.
it's not spoken. But I would say most of the romance in Godzilla films isn't really spoken. It's mainly just people looking at each other while Godzilla rampages.
Exactly.
But yeah, and my number 3 worst is Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, which does have one of the worst of the romance plots of longing stares across a bay, which includes the character of Miki, who is the telepath woman who is in like 6 of these movies, because they were they were shooting for continuity in the 90s, and they were like, let's link it around this woman who does absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, the 90s era of God. So there's the 3 main era. There's the first set of films from 1954 to 1975, the Showa era, which that's what we sort of think of. I think that's like the typical Godzilla films. They're kind of kitschy, kind of campy, people in suits, like, doing weird, goofy, silly shit in kids' movies. Then there's the 90s run, the Versus era, which is continuity based. Every film leads directly into the next. It tells one very sort of unified story about Godzilla coming back and then tearing his way across Japan for a few years and then being destroyed by Destroya. And then the Millennium series, which is the one that kicks off with Godzilla 2000. Every film is its own little self-identify. It's like a little bubble. Like, there's no continuity. Every one of them brings Godzilla back for the very first time. I think the 90s era is the worst of those 3. I think it has...
I would hope so.
It has highlights for sure, but I find the continuity to be a real drag, and just the 1-2 punch of Mothra and Space Godzilla is just not pleasant. And even Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 is really not very good.
No, that was a bit of a slog. And then after Godzilla 98, we had to take like a week off because we were just like, you know what? This has been a lot for us.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so far I would agree. Even though like Godzilla 2000, I did not particularly care for. I'm excited to push on from it, and there's certainly things I'm looking forward to, like going in. What the hell was I gonna say? Flew out of my brain. Were you saying something?
No, I wrapped up, but I will throw out there, we are potentially setting aside the American films in this non-starter of a shared universe with Kong Skull Island. That will, I think we can all pretty much agree that there will be no more Godzilla films in this run after the new one, Godzilla vs. Kong, comes out, because they're frankly not making very much money.
Mm-hmm.
But we do potentially have a 4th series starting up in Japan, which happened in, I believe, 2016, 2016,
mm-hmm.
with Shin Godzilla, which, like the Millennium films, is a standalone film, but it's all the way standalone. It doesn't even take place in the same continuity as the 1954 film, which all of the Millennium films do.
Oh, wow.
I'm curious, did you see Shin Godzilla?
No, that's coming up in our marathon. Before I started watching the marathon, the only Japanese Godzilla film I'd seen was the first one.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I'd seen, that was it. Yeah, what's up?
I think Shin Godzilla is a very, very good movie.
I have heard
I
that, and
think
I'm very excited. It's going to be a little treat, kind of at the end of the Japanese ones.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I'm interested in seeing because like Godzilla 2000, it's definitely starting to kind of combine CGI elements with the man in a suit action, but in a way that was
Hmm.
much more tasteful, I will say, than what 98 Americans had decided to do.
Absolutely.
Um, oh, and I will say about the 98 one, it did provide one of the funniest parts of your Godzilla review marathon, where you were talking about how the design of the new Godzilla and how it's not entirely terrible, even if the CGI is. And you were talking about how it doesn't have to be a Godzilla film, and it might as well be called Iguanos Lizard Bitch of the Pacific.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I often look fondly on that fake movie title.
It's so good. I would watch the shit out of that movie.
It feels like you can very easily, at least I can very easily imagine like a horribly cheap Filipino film by that title.
Yes, which is the kind of thing I want to watch.
Exactly. This is a good thing. The Filipino bee industry is very, very good.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Oh, okay. So, speaking of the opposite of that, I believe I know the answer to this question. Well, okay. What are your feelings about the upcoming Godzilla versus Kong? I won't ask if you're excited because, but
I
what
mean,
what are you thinking going in?
I see very few signs for hope. I perhaps unlike a lot of giant monster movie fans, I did not like Kong Skull Island. I found it to be very droning, and the human element was just like a huge, huge problem for me. So like bringing that more explicitly into the Godzilla universe is not something I'm excited about. I don't like Adam Wingard. I know that he has his very, very vocal fan base. I have not yet liked anything he's done. So to me, that's like it's two things I don't like coming together to infect a thing that has already, with Godzilla King of the Monsters, gotten off the rails. So I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, me neither. And I do like Adam Wingard. Or I at least like Your Next and The Guest. I know you hated Your Next. That was
I hated Your Next. I have not seen The Guest.
you don't have to. But I'm hoping for kind of a reverse. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so yeah, Godzilla versus Kong. I agree with you that Kong Skull Island was an absolute misfire, a total snooze fest of a movie. And then obviously I hated Godzilla King of the Monsters, so I'm like, yeah, these two movies coming together, what could go wrong?
Right.
And
And
also,
like,
sorry, what?
yeah, and like Godzilla King of the Monsters wasted a director whose work I have liked. So like if that's what this franchise can do to someone who I admire, I don't even want to think of what this franchise is going to do to someone who I'm dubious about.
Yeah. And I at least think they recognize that Kong Skull Island was the least popular one because it doesn't seem like they're bringing back any of those people. It seems like they're mostly sticking with the Godzilla continuity of like all the bullshit about Monarch and bioacoustics or whatever. Who gives a shit? But I, it's still too early to know if this is an accurate measurement or not. But what I'm seeing here is that the runtime is going to be 2 hours and 52 minutes, and that chills my blood.
That has got to be wrong. I refuse to live in a universe where that is true.
I just, it feels right to me, but we will have to see.
God damn, that would be too long.
Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing another measure that says 113 minutes, so I'm hoping that one's correct. But like, who are you gonna trust between Wikipedia and IMDb? Neither.
I mean, exactly. This is the problem.
We'll find out when it comes to us.
Which will be in 19 days.
Ooh, oh, I gotta get going.
Or actually, fewer than that if you do not live in the United States. I believe that the rest of the world's actually getting it a few days earlier than we are.
Congratulations,
So.
everyone. Enjoy. Okay, yeah, this is a super broad topic to talk about in such a short episode. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like needs to be said about Godzilla?
Well, I mean, let's see. We talked about a little bit about monster design. We did not talk about my second favorite monster at all,
Ooh,
who is Mechagodzilla.
ooh, yes, but do I seem to recall you preferred him in the original versus Terror of Mechagodzilla?
I think you recall that correctly. It's been some while since I've watched either of those two films, honestly.
Fair enough. But so what do you like about Mechagodzilla?
I like that he is a giant fucking robot who is shaped like a dinosaur.
That's a good point.
It's a very lizard brain thing. It's very much like that's cool. That's just cool. Like I think Mechagodzilla he's always it rather I should say because it's a robot has always worked. Like even in the films that aren't good, like the '90s Mechagodzilla film, I don't think is good. Mechagodzilla itself is a strong concept because it's like, what if we take Godzilla and like add rocket launchers and the ability to transformer and shit like that, and there's something that I think really gets to the B movie matinee charms of this franchise just inherently with that character.
No, I totally understand. And also, it's like the dark twin of so and so. Like that's such a melodrama kind of trope, and it's
Right.
fun to play with the kind of soap opera continuity of Godzilla.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I get that. Like I do like Mechagodzilla. But I don't. I guess what I've discovered in this conversation is that the flying monsters don't necessarily do it for me. Like I love Mothra as a concept, but the things that come with Mothra tend to be like a stiffness of flight. I really really like the twin fairies, I guess, that kind of
Yes.
accompany and herald Mothra. Um,
Yes.
but
I like the Mothra song.
yes, and it is a good song, but also I don't need to hear it 5 times in the movie.
I respect that. I do respect that.
And any time that the Godzilla movies go to an island, there is a much higher chance that we're gonna get blackface in our movie, which always icks me out a little bit. So the Mothra stuff, it's like there's a lot of strong kind of fantasy element to it, and it never quite comes together perfectly for me. Um, but yeah, I want to like Mothra a lot more than I want to like Rodan. Rodan, I think, is like kind of cute. There's one of the later '70s ones. His eyes are definitely like swiveling around a lot more, and I'm like, that's kind of
Yes.
adorable.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I would say that Mothra is a stronger concept than Rodan for sure. Rodan's just a giant pterodactyl, ultimately.
yeah, and that's it's not engaging in the way that Mothra. Yeah, Mothra has a mythology.
Exactly.
Um, but for me, I'd say I love Gigan just because for me that is my version of the matinee pleasures that you get from Mechagodzilla. Because he's got so many fiddly bits. He's got these kind of pincers around his beak. He's got the saw tummy. The what's not to like in Gigan? Um,
No, I like the monster design a lot. I think Gigan suffers from only having shown up in one film, and it's a pretty terrible film.
that's true. In okay, yeah, that's true. And he does show up in Megalon, but it's I think a lot of stock footage, so I don't know that it counts. Um, and then what else do I like? I mean, I actually have a soft spot for the monster no one can pronounce, Anguirus.
Ah, yes, yes.
Um,
The what he's built. He's based on some kind of specific dinosaur. I forget what kind. Ankylosaurus, I think.
yeah, he's like the spiky armadillo dinosaur, whichever one that is. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Because he's the first monster that Godzilla
He's
ever
the
fights.
first monster Godzilla fights. Exactly. How
Yeah,
can you not love that?
he does look like an ankylosaurus. Yeah, the first time watching Godzilla raids again, I was like, oh, this is what they chose? Because I know Godzilla, fights all these giant lumbering creatures, and I was like, oh, this looks like an armadillo. But then as he shows up again and again, he definitely teams up with Godzilla in those later ones like Gigan and Megalon, largely because that's
Hmm.
the costume that was in the best shape. Um,
Yep.
but
Literally exactly the reason why.
mm-hmm. But yeah, I kind of found him to be almost Pokemon like kind of an adorable presence. Um, is there anyone I'm missing that like is worth bringing up, like any of his kaiju brethren?
I like there's a couple one-off monsters that I think only show up ever in Terror of Mechagodzilla. And I forget the name of the like weird sort of slender-necked giant lizard beast creature, but that's also the film where we get
Titanosaurus?
Titanosaurus, thank you.
You're welcome.
But that's also the film where we get King Shisa, who is just so great, and I really wish that character had come back for future Godzilla films.
Oh yeah, it's
Sort of a giant, like, there's like a Japanese guardian god statue that's based on like a type of dog, like a small like yappy barky dog, and this is basically then the like kaiju version of a small yappy dog who's also like a serious looking sort of reptilian god creature, and it's very cool.
It is really cool, and he looks like Rolf from the Muppets.
Exactly, and that's everyone's favorite Muppet, right? Not just mine.
Wait, that's your favorite Muppet?
No, of course not.
Okay,
It's Jim's favorite Muppet, Jim Henson's favorite Muppet.
yeah, I mean Rolf is adorable. But my favorite Muppet's probably Animal. But that's a different
That's
podcast.
a legit choice. That's a different podcast. We will have to talk about a Muppet movie at some point, so we can do a take 2 about the Muppets.
Oh yeah, I'll have to have you plant that in the next episode. Just somehow find a way to talk about the Muppets. But not to be like so up my own ass, but in my review of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla on Letterboxd, I described King Shisa as if Rolf from the Muppets was cast in a cruise ship production of Cats.
I like that.
I
like that.
It's just very fuzzy and dynamic. I totally agree. Like he definitely should have come back for something.
Because I don't even think King Shisa makes it back into Godzilla Final Wars, which was the like very self-conscious, let's have every monster we can lay our hands on show up for like one final bow. And I know you haven't seen that one yet. That's from 2004.
I have not seen that yet. In your memory, I mean, because Destroy All Monsters is the 60s version of that.
Right.
Including bringing in monsters that have never shown up in Godzilla movies, like Manda or Varan.
Yes.
Is Final Wars comparable, or is there even more in Final Wars?
There's even more in Final Wars.
Okay.
Because there's just a larger, at that point, like a bestiary of monsters, because Destroy All Monsters is what, like the 7th Godzilla film. At this point, we've gotten half a century into the Godzilla franchise. So lots and lots of cameos in Final Wars.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
Even the 98 Godzilla is actually worked into Godzilla canon through Final Wars.
Oh, it's that one. Okay, because I had heard that he's gonna come back in a big way, and I'm ready, but I wasn't sure which of the Millennium franchise that would be in.
Yep, the last one.
Oh hell yeah! Okay, I'm ready for that. Real quick, about Destroy All Monsters. Like, I really do love the spectacle of that movie, and it's a very fun movie on its own, but it would be perfect just for the single shot of Baragon destroying the Arc de Triomphe.
Yes. No, it's a good, solid movie. I think the problem I have with it is that it's the third time in like 4 movies that they've used basically the exact same plot, and it just gets a little like, okay,
space aliens show up.
You don't say. The aliens are pretending to be kind, but they're actually controlling Ghidorah to kill us all, you say. And it's just like, at a certain point, it's like, yeah, I've seen this plot. Thank you.
Yeah, and the thing that separates that in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is that this time the aliens are also gorillas.
Exactly, which makes them better.
It does.
Because again, idiot B-movie pleasures are really the reason that this franchise is worth it.
Yeah, and as much as this movie does have its share of low points and some lows that are extravagantly low, like for a long-term marathon like this, and there really is no film franchise that could be longer, it has an astonishingly high hit rate as long as you're not expecting the same tone.
Right. The number of actually unwatchable Godzilla films to me is certainly fewer than 10. And the number, like even the bad ones, like your Megalon or your Gigan, are still fun. They're still like good, silly nonsense fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like especially like like those two that you specifically mentioned, those ones do rely on a lot of stock footage. Like Megalon shoots out these lightning bolts that for some reason are the same color as King Ghidorah's, so they can use all of his old destruction footage. So it's maybe not necessarily served by watching them all in a row like I have done. But if you just throw a dart at at the Godzilla franchise list, like you're gonna have a higher chance of watching something you're gonna enjoy than most franchises, I would say.
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. Especially because if you're just throwing a dart like that, you're probably not going to be looking at the animated films, which takes away 3 of those fewer than 10 that I was complaining about just now. So.
Are they real bad?
They're not good. They're
okay,
not good.
I am gonna watch that trilogy, so pray for me.
I think the first of the trilogy is fine. I think that it goes wrong pretty quickly after that.
Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. A grim portent of the future.
I'm just trying to think, are there any specific films that we didn't talk about that I just want to say one last word about? And I think there is, which is I want to throw some love to the second film of the Godzilla, the Millennium series, which I know you haven't seen, Godzilla versus Megaguirus from 2000. I think it's a hoot. People hate it. I think it's a hoot.
Ooh, that's what I have next.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once more. This is the second episode of Take Two. Next time, well, hopefully they'll do a top 5 list so we can have a stronger statement of purpose for this podcast, so it'll make more sense about what we're doing.
We are going to do a top 5, and I think it's even fair for me to just go ahead and spoil that a little bit.
We're getting the scoop.
If you want, yeah, we'll go ahead and give this. This is all our special present to those of you who've been willing to take the plunge into Take Two. Our next podcast, a week from today, will be top 5 5-year plus sequels, and that comes to us courtesy of Patreon Carter Smith. So thank you, Carter, for that.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, I can't wait, and that's definitely going to be fodder for a lot of, I mean, the only reason to listen to alternate ending,
you will, if nothing else. Go ahead.
I was like, the only reason to listen to alternate ending is so you get to listen to Take Two. So that's going to be exciting.
No, I was going to say, if nothing else, you'll get to make either Rob or Carrie watch one of the Before movies. So that'll be fun.
Ooh, spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah, like it's going to be a giant fucking surprise that I have a Before movie on my 5-year plus sequels list.
Has Rob not seen those?
I bet neither of them have seen any of. I mean, maybe they've both seen Sunrise, but I bet neither of them have seen any of the sequels. We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out in that conversation. And so, yeah, tune in for 2 weeks from now where we get to dig into something.
Something.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I hope we had a blast. I know I did.
Always.
Yeah, I guess.
Always.
Should I share? You can follow me on Twitter at It's Raining Brens. That's what I want to promote. And follow Tim's reviews at alternateending.com.
Exactly. You cannot follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, but it will be a very unsatisfying experience for you to do so because I have not tweeted in over 2 years.
Yeah. You're not even doing Moby Dick anymore. It just you dropped off the face of the planet.
Well, the thing is, once I started trying to tweet for real, I couldn't keep doing Moby Dick because then it would have just been all stupid.
Yeah.
So I just gave up.
That's fair.
Also, when I started doing Moby Dick in 2009, I genuinely did not think Twitter was going to live more than 2 or 3 years. And by the time it became clear that Twitter would, I was like, fuck this. This is not going the way I wanted it to. So
that's fair. You got to take a stand when you got to take a stand.
Exactly.
But yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a great week. See you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Very pleased that we were able to get you another 1 hour episode there for this nice 30-minute podcast series.